You know, I don't know much about Linus Tech Tips. The only Linus Tech Tips video I've ever watched, I watched it while assembling this computer. Madison, also known as Swap, who presumably works with LTT, is upsetty spaghetti. There's two dramas, in fact. Two dramas! To stop the speculation and DMs I'm receiving, I chose to quit my role at LTT because the working environment was ruining my mental health. The number of daily items the social media role at the time was expected to fill was incredibly high. I was expected to post 3 tweets, 2 Insta posts, and 2 TikToks minimum per day. That is a lot. That is a lot. Yeah, for sure. Expected to plan, film, edit, and post floatplane, 2 floatplane exclusives. As a poster, I laughed at that, but as a job, that's a lot. Yeah, a lot of people don't. So the thing is, like, it's one of those things where people think it's super easy because everyone does it, right? It's like, oh man, 3 tweets a day. But it's not just like a regular person tweeting. We're talking about a high level of professionalism with specific content. You know, it's the social media gets infinitely harder when there's a standard of professionalism that you have to apply to what you're doing. Not to mention TikTok stuff. I mean, we're talking about potentially like cobbling together clips, editing it properly, making sure the subject's right, the drop is right, making sure everything works together. Any kind of like media coordination and production, all of that, that is a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, for sure. I was also expected to manage, plan, come up with, execute, get approval for, and schedule out all the sponsored content on socials, not including YouTube. Wow, that is so much work. Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, this is way too much work for one person. Way too much for one person. All while being told not to complain because my job was the fun job. Okay, this is something that happens a lot in basically every job that people look up to when they're growing up. Like every job that people imagine they'll really enjoy doing. It's like this happens a ton in the video game industry, especially, where it's like, man, it sure does suck how we have to do like crunch for 40 weeks a year, and also how I get asked to do unreasonable stuff and I never get any credit. And it's like, what? Whoa, are you complaining about being a game dev? You know? A really clear-cut example of this actually would be in manga, you know? Because Shonen Jump, the premier producer of shonen manga over in Japan, expects work standards from the people who make the manga that bordering on like Sisyphusian, you know? It's like insane, you know? Like putting out a 20-page chapter a week, it's not like that, it's inhuman. Yeah, it's slave driving, literally. The light novel Slave Factory too. Well, light novels are trash, so I don't care. They can slave away, whatever. It's one of those things where it's like, bro, you get to make a manga? You're complaining about the work and you make a manga? But they work like 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and the day they're not working 14 hours, they're working like 8 hours, you know? It's not acceptable. People do this all the time with nice jobs. And I think a lot of it is because people will see them and think they're ungrateful. The creator of Naruto, when he finished his manga, a joke on Oda saying that he will be able to walk with his son. Oda took like 3 weeks off for eye surgery. Yeah, no, they work like completely nonstop, and then they die, you know, as is the case. But oftentimes these unfair standards are pushed by like the masses because, you know, if you're in these positions and you complain about your job, a bunch of people will be like, dude, you're complaining about this? I would love to do that. Bro, I would love to get paid to tweet and make Instagram posts. And it's like, well, you have no idea what you're talking about. You would love to get paid to tweet and make Instagram posts, sure. Not to work for a massive internet brand where there's a like high stakes, high standards social media curation policy that you single-handedly maintain across multiple platforms. That's not as fun, you know? Can't speak on what it's like now, but they have an entire team working on what I was expected to accomplish alone. Never made any statements during my time. My work was called dog shit. I was called incompetent. I know that feel. After enough complaints from me, I was pulled into a meeting. In that meeting, the writer's room was pointed to, and I was asked, do you think any of these people would have a hard time getting a job? I said no. I was then pointed to and asked, what about you? I remember asking, are you going to fire me? I was laughed at and told to stop being so pessimistic as if my job and ability hadn't just been vaguely threatened. I was then asked to agree to a verbal no drama contract. The verbal part is important. Jesus Christ. Okay, this is pretty bad. This is like cartoon bad boss. Like, oh, you have a complaint about your job, like, you see all these people out here? You think they could get a job? How about you? You know, like literally, like a quick, like draw an evil cartoon boss. And then the no drama contract. No drama verbal contract. First of all, folks, if you're ever asked to do anything at work, get it in writing. That's one. For two, especially if it's sussy. For 2, no drama in this case means no complaint about your work. A warning that came very shortly after I had come forward, stating I had been inappropriately grabbed multiple times in the office, among other issues. I was barred from being in videos, so when you ask what happened, why isn't she in more content, this is why. God damn. Sorry, you've been groped too many times by our coworkers. You can't appear in our videos anymore, because that'll make people more sympathetic to you when you inevitably leave the company and complain about the harassment you've received. This is bad, holy shit. It is, though, to be fair, and I'm sure many people in chat will agree with me, being a woman in tech is like a solid coin flip on being assaulted. So, like, imagine all of the worst guys you had GE courses with in college, growing up, becoming, like, semi-wealthy, and then packing them in an office where it's one woman to every 10 guys, you know? Yes, women did used to be more prevalent in tech back in the 70s and 80s. It was about 50-50. I think in some areas it was actually more women than it was men. When it was less prestigious, yeah. Well, back in the day, really? Yeah, okay, so computers have existed for well over half a century, of course, but they were big, boxy, you know, expensive, unwieldy things compared to what we have today. Computers used to be like a very high specialty, like tech and government specific kind of thing. And in that environment, yeah, computer science was basically like a 50-50 male-female split. But when computers became small and cheap enough that they could be marketed to home consumers, they were marketed as a toy primarily, you know, like here's your solitaire box, right? Like they weren't really thought of as the world-changing device they would later end up being. And in being marketed as a toy, like think about like if it's like the 80s and 90s and you're going to market a very expensive, and they were very expensive, you know, like fun machine with discretionary income, that's going to be marketed towards guys, right? Like we're talking only a decade or so after women were allowed to open their own checking accounts. You know, women on average, like certainly today, but even more so then, just did not have like the disposable income to even like lean into that market. So they were marketed towards men and boys. And because they were marketed towards men and boys grew up using computers, which then got them into computer science, which skewed the demographics of computer scientists way more towards men. So it's you know, it's kind of the same as you know, like Legos, where Legos for the longest time were like a equal 50-50 boy-girl thing, but then Legos pivoted into doing more like action sets, cops, soldiers, that kind of stuff, race cars, construction vehicles, and they got marketed more as a boys' toy, and then like more people ended up working at Lego who were guys, and cycles around, you know? After it was publicly announced by Linus he was hiring me without my knowledge or consent to that situation, and also before I was even offered the job or shown the salary, I agreed and signed the employment contract. Super skeevy right here. For somebody as huge as Linus to publicly offer a job before like privately discussing the terms is basically saying like, if you turn this down, everyone's gonna blame you. Like you will look ingracious if you're the one, like, you know, now we've put the foot forward publicly. This is why you're only supposed to publicly discuss stuff like this after it's been agreed upon privately. God damn, there was a lot here. I was actually called a tattletale. I was told I was bossy when I was trying to be assertive, like I was asked to do. I was told I was arguing when I was trying to discuss my point of view. I was told to calm my tits and stop being such a bitch, and other comments to similar effects. Least sexist tech environment, I gotta say. They're really setting records here, really breaking boundaries. I really like the word bossy, because if a person ever calls a woman bossy, especially in a work environment, that's like a 99.99999% percent chance they're sexist. It's like such an obvious stuff. Like just with the people I've spoken to, even if it's all behind the scenes or whatever, calling someone a bitch, I call a lot of people a bitch, to be fair. So I can't really like, okay, like, could it be sexist to call a woman a bitch? Like, sure, certainly it can. Certainly if you're like her boss and you're telling it to her. But if you're like privately going like, this person's a bitch, that person's a bitch. Okay, people say that. Calling a woman bossy, I have never heard that from somebody who wasn't like obviously chafing at the idea of having to deal with a woman's issues. Like like whether she's above or below them, you know. Oh, I for sure think that bossy is more sexist than bitch, because I and a lot of other people call men bitches. I've never heard a man be called bossy. Not once. When men are bossy in a way that is genuinely negative, they get called a dick, but the term like, or like overbearing or whatever, but bossy, the way bossy is like a very childish word. The term, it just sounds like a baby word, bossy, you know? When people say bossy, there's a combination of they're over the line, but also in like this petty, innocuous, diminutive way. Boss baby. It's very infantilizing, yes. Like, if I went into a room and I was, like, aggressive and tyrannical and left or whatever, nobody would call me bossy. They would call me a dick or, like, a huge piece of shit or whatever. But if a woman did that, and, you know, it, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling a woman a huge piece of shit if she's being a piece of shit. But the bossy thing just so specifically indicates this, like, this irritation at a woman being uppity or out of, or, you know, like, out of place or whatever. I don't know. There's something weird about it. I can't quite describe it. I'd have to think about it more. There's just something. It's not like I've been in an office environment that much, but it's the impression that I've gotten from the times that I have been. Last year, he sent his fan base after employees for trying to unionize. Yeah, we're going to take a look at that in a second, I think. Not Anna Kasparian. You don't have to bait my attention as often as you are, okay? It's all right. You can dial it down a bit. There was a hashtag ban bossy online campaign about 8 years ago. Women are right to be chafed by that. I remember getting told off for taking my sick days, as in the days you're entitled to. This no days off grind set culture culminated in the real moment I realized I had to leave. I purposefully cut my leg open so badly I would have to go to the ER to get it stapled back together. It was genuinely the only way in my mind to take a day off without being harassed for the reason why. Okay. I don't know how much of this reflects on her mental state and how much of this reflects in the workplace, but that's probably like a mutual thing right there. Jesus. Yeah, related. I'd spoken to managers about how I was struggling, how the workload was too much for one person, but I was belittled and told you just have bad time management skills. I'm still scared shitless of what the response will be since I am a woman and have since been called dramatic. I'm not stating what happened to me because I'm seeking clout. I'm stating it because it's been eating away from me for over 2 years. There's some genuinely compassionate, intelligent people who work there. Ego and a bottom line are destroying them. Yeah, what's all this about Linus Tech Tips not wanting there to be a union because all of his workers are haha such good friends? LMG clips. Would LMG ever unionize?
Former video editor for a tech channel that toured my studio. Wow, that really narrows it down. I don't know who you are, though. I'm sorry. What protections do you have in place for your staff? Would you support a unionization of stash/camera crew under YouTube creators? Is YouTube creators a thing? I've made it very clear in the past that I feel that if our staff felt like they needed a union, I would consider that, and Yvonne too, we would both consider it personal failures. Here in Canada,
that's a huge red flag right there. The idea that, like, your workers getting a union is a negative reflection on you is the idea that a really good boss wouldn't have workers who unionize, i.e. them unionizing is an attack on your likability as a boss or some indication of, like, that's not how it works. This is essentially, so this is why I like to relate political and economic democracy. The equivalent of this would being like a dictator saying, you know, oh, if my peasants needed a democracy, like, I would consider that an indication that I had failed. You know, like, if the people beneath me, you know, looked for representation, then what am I doing? It's not about you. It's the process. It's the system. Even the best boss will still have material interests dictated by their being a member of the bourgeoisie. And likewise, you know, even well-kept and well-treated workers will want a union. That's a really bad attitude to have. Oh, what does he say? How does he continue? It sucks because he'd always given me such good vibes. Well, this is, okay, so again, this is why it's so important to understand class dynamics, okay? It doesn't matter how good of a person you are, Linus Tech Tips, whatever, all right? The whole point of, like, material dialectics is that, you know, and class consciousness is that people are pushed in these directions almost regardless of their personalities, you know? Like, being a businessman and being sympathetic to the interests of the bourgeoisie, that doesn't make you a bad person in the sense that you're, like, maliciously choosing self-interest. It means that you are subject to ideological biases that legitimize that perspective to you. So in his case, he's doing it in this bitchy, like, self-aggrandizing way, right? Like this, oh, well, if they were to unionize, it means I haven't done good enough for them. So his way of legitimizing his anti-union philosophy is the idea that, you know, if he just does a good enough job as a boss and does it, like, throws enough pizza parties, that there will be no need to unionize. And that's, I think, a fairly common attitude for a lot of people who are running this gambit, you know? It's not about malice. It's like, hey, hey, we're all family here, you know? One big family.
There's absolutely nothing that we'd be able to do to prevent it, legally speaking. So if they decided that they wanted to approach their engagement with their employer that way, there's absolutely nothing that we could do to challenge them on it. It's actually sort of baffling to me that it is possible to have such blatant, like just brazen anti-organizing policies in place in our neighbors to the south. I don't get it.
Neighbors
What
to
protections do you have in place for your staff?
is he Canadian? Okay, okay, just making sure. And fair. I'm pretty sure that Canada's protect. Okay, I think Canada has better union protections than we do, but I will say Justin Trudeau has been shutting down a lot of strikes lately, so
I mean, really,
What does that mean?
yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we have like a dental plan. I'm not really 100% sure what you're asking. There's a lot of legal protections for employees just in general in Canada. Like my wife and I joke sometimes it's easier to get a divorce than to fire an employee. Like it's actually very difficult. So
okay. So this is okay, so here we go. This is another example right here. This is the same thing that people say when they're like, oh man, because of tenure, it's impossible to fire bad teachers, which is not true. When people complain about shit like that, like, oh man, these worker protections are crazy, we can't fire anyone, it's not true. Like at all. It's belly aching that's meant to like overstate, like, oh man, we've gone too far, it's crazy. You can't fire anyone these days. Yeah, you can. Obviously, there are protections, but I think it's good that there can be protections before you remove a person's livelihood. Personally, I think that's a good thing. I think that's cool, in my opinion. But yeah, I agree you shouldn't be able to fire somebody without cause. That's pretty bad. I want to hear more from this. This is just a segment from their podcast. I'm not showing it because copyright, but it's telling.
I don't really feel like they need additional protections to be.
Would unionization help or hurt workplace sexual harassment discrimination? I can't fathom a way that unionization would hurt workplace sexual harassment or discrimination. I mean, I guess there's some like abstract moon world scenario where it could happen, like hypothetically. Oftentimes, the harassment that women face in the workplace come from management or are at least abetted by management. Having a union not only means that you have like a line of opposition against managerial behavior, it also means you have a way of discussing and broadcasting publicly these kinds of behaviors outside of the pre-existing workplace environment. So I overwhelmingly, I would assume that it helps in those cases, but
Perfectly honest with you. I know that in the States, particularly in states where they have at-will employment, it's a totally different story. There's basically no protection whatsoever. You can just dismiss someone for any reason at any time, and they're entitled to like nothing.
Yeah, it's not true.
But that is not the case up here at all.
Yeah.
Obvious Lobster says probably like an anonymous report line for HR. So we do have a third-party HR firm. We do
third-party HR firm, really?
Have, if anyone ever had a problem with me, they could take it up with Yvonne, and we do take that anonymity and we do take that privacy very seriously. If they have an issue that is so big.
Didn't somebody in chat just say that's his wife? If you have a problem with me, just come over to my wife to discuss it. Feel like there might be a slight conflict of interest there. I don't know if I personally would feel comfortable going to his wife. Yes, they are co-owners. I really do not feel like your wife should be HR.
Big that they can't trust either of us with it. Frankly, we've failed them anyway. I don't know what we could possibly do to resolve it.
Wait, what?
That is so big that they can't trust either of us with it. Frankly, we've failed them anyway. I don't know what we could possibly do to resolve it.
See, he's doing it again. Man, if somebody has a problem and they don't trust coming to me, the main guy, or my wife, then I guess we failed. I don't know how or why a person would have issues that they couldn't take to us, the cool business mom and dad. But, like, so this is, it's all, well, yeah, of course, HR protects the firm, not the employee. Yeah. Isn't that bad corporate practice to go to the main guy and kind of snub the managers? I mean, in general, going to HR doesn't really always have the best outcome.
I think that...
He said third-party HR. Yeah, but then he referred to an HR lady by first name, so I don't really know.
Overall, we try to do a really good job of addressing people's concerns, and...
Is his wife, like, not the real HR, but she's like the cool business mom who people can go to if they have an issue. Is that what he's saying? Like, we have a third-party HR firm if you need it, but why not talk to us cool mom and dad, you know, with the pizza party like that? She's CFO? Okay, that's what I'm taking to be the case.
I don't know what to tell you guys. Laddie says, the thing is, every bad boss in the world says you don't.
I don't know what to tell you guys. This is what I mean, right? Like, this is the subtle reaffirmation. This is the liberal myth of the good boss. The idea that if you're good and responsible enough, and if you're cool enough, and you're friendly, and you throw the pizza parties, that you can circumvent all of the class biases that incline members of the bourgeoisie to act against their workers. And it's just not true, you know? No matter how good of a boss you are, these ideological inclinations creep up, and they have to be accounted for appropriately. Like with a union, for example.
Don't need a union, I'm a good boss. The reality is sometimes your interests will not align with your staff, and relying on you being a good guy is them taking a risk. Being in a union doesn't change anything. If you're a good enough boss, the union never needs to be involved. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah, but I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not going to see eye to eye with you on that.
Ooh, outright rejecting the correct. So not only does he arrive at the wrong answer, he actually gets like irritated with the correct one, you know? Like he didn't just arrive at he didn't just go like, oh yeah, I can get that, you know? He's like, I don't think I'm gonna see it. No, sorry, I'm the business dad and I throw the pizza parties.
I agree that a lot of bad employers probably would say you don't need a union, but in our case,
and have, yeah,
we are
and actively do.
Yeah, we're constantly trying to figure out how to make LMG a better place to work. That's
huge red flag. Every business in the world says this, man. Walmart says this. You don't need a union. A union boss would only take a large portion of your paycheck. We are constantly striving here at Walmart to provide the best possible experience for both our customers and our employees. Like everyone, we're a family.
It's not going to change. So there you go.
And I think there's been
you can read so much into his body language too. He's being emotional here. He's being petulant. The way he doesn't say much, the way he doesn't explain, he just sort of puts his shoulders up. It's my way or the highway, you know? It's actually really weird. Well, it's not weird in the sense that it's uncommon. It's very common. It's weird in the sense that, like, you guys can see it, can't you? You can see the agitation between a good argument made by the person he's responding to and his emotional bias towards bourgeois interest. The idea that his personal moral virtue can overwhelm and overwrite the need for a union. And he can't resolve that because he could be the smartest man on earth and that chatter that he's replying to would be right. He can't argue his way out of that. So instead, all he can do is give the same corpo banal answer of, we're striving to make things better for our employees, and then shrug petulantly. It's a good example of how, and Linus Tech Tips, smart guy, not saying he's dumb, clearly not, but it really is a great example of how, like, ideology reigns over intelligence in many cases. How, you know, you can be a really smart person, but your brain can just be dunked in ideology, and it really influences the conclusions that you arrive at, you know?
Well, I should hope so. I mean, in the early days, it was not great. we're always trying.
We worked out of a garage. We were a scrappy company. I literally lived in his house. It's okay.
Dusty, yeah. You had both tenant rights and employee rights.
Yeah, dude, I had it good.
I'm pretty sure we violated all of them.
Probably.
Neat. Linus Tech Tips has responded to the big Twitter thread that we looked at, saying, I was in a state of shock reading through these allegations, plain and simple. They're not consistent with my recollections. They aren't consistent with our internal processes. They're not consistent with our company values. We pride ourselves in maintaining a safe and inclusive environment. In addition to our existing report system, those anonymous and otherwise, we proactively reached out internally today to encourage members of the team to report any workplace bullying or harassment they might experience so we can take quick and decisive action. Okay, so right off the bat, this makes me believe her accusations more. I want to be clear that even in cases where I'm inclined to believe her story over Linus Tech Tips, we still don't know if she's telling the truth, right? It's a he said, she said, kind of, you know. So what do we look at to weigh our opinion one way or the other, right? Well, we know that Linus Tech Tips has a, let's say, callous attitude towards worker rights and worker unionization, and this is not the first time the accusation of overburdening people with work has come up. So that leans towards her, you know, in favorability. But then we have this. In addition to our existing report systems, We've proactively reached out internally today to encourage members of our team to report any workplace bullying or harassment they might be experiencing. So this, to me, reads almost like an admission of guilt. Oh, sorry, this isn't from Linus. This is from Sebastian. My apologies. This isn't Linus. This is the new CEO? Is this the new CEO, or is this Oh, that is him. Oh, okay, somebody in chat was saying that Linus wasn't the CEO anymore, and then I saw Sebastian up there, so I thought, like, oh, it must be the new guy. Okay, so yeah, my point still stands then. It would still stand even if it was another person, because I'm talking about corporate culture here, not necessarily just Linus. But whatever the case may be, you know, imagine if, like, you had a kid, and your kid went to elementary school, and then your kid got bullied, like, pretty bad, or, like, hurt, or maybe bloodied up a little bit, and then you went there, and you're like, what the f? My kid says that he was hit in the hallway, and none of the teachers did anything. And the teacher looks at you smiling, and they're like, that's not consistent with my recollections. And in addition to that, I've also reached out today to all the teachers and told them to report any bullying they see in the hallways. It's like, first of all, did they not already do that? And second of all, if nothing happened, why would you have to change your policy or, like, reaffirm anything? And third of all, why are you deflecting from the accusations I'm making against you now to the general state of your company, which is what you're trying to protect? See, Linus's interest here is to defend the honor of the company, obviously. I mean, that makes sense. To do so this blatantly in response to a pretty pointed accusation suggests a level of transparency in that goal that betrays maybe, you know, a little more culpability. Wouldn't this make sense if he wasn't aware of anything happening, though? If he is truly not aware of anything happening, and I don't know if I believe that, but if he is genuinely aware, if I was in his position, I don't think I would write something like this. I think I would write something that's to the effect of, I was completely unaware of these accusations, but we take them very seriously. I would like to follow up with this woman and talk with her to get a full recount of the problems faced so we can understand and deal with them appropriately. You know, we will, you know, take her allegations and considerations and match them to, like, an internal investigation, like that kind of thing. Because what you're doing there is indicating you're focusing specifically on the claim and not doing this general, like, we over here at Linus Tech Tips are concerned but with the quality of our workplace environment, you know, that kind of thing. The CEO, Taryn Tong, also responded saying that he was shocked at the allegations and the company described. Part of this process, hire an outside investigator to look into the allegations and will commit to publish the findings and implement. That's interesting. The CEO's response sounds better than Linus's does. To be clear, the CEO is very new. Yeah, which means he probably doesn't know. So if you if you think about it for a second, his response comes across, I think, a lot better. And he almost certainly was not aware of anything done to the woman specifically, whereas Linus almost certainly was, and therefore does know, and his response is worse. Isn't that interesting? Because if he's new, like properly new, you know, he's like, yeah, we're going to get an like, listen to what I just said. I just said we're going to try to internally investigate and correspond these claims. And he's like, yeah, we're going to do an internal review, hire an outside investigator, and then publish the findings. I mean, that sounds a lot more convincing than just Linus going like, our HR team will be, you know, you get what I mean, right? Again, it's not definitive. It's just indicative. The CEO is better at managing things while Linus is constantly hella emotional all the time. Yeah, it looks like he takes a lot of this personally. Guys, this is the worst kind of boss to work for. Trust me. All right? Everyone in chat who's experienced this will agree. The only thing worse than a hard-ass overbearing boss is a hard-ass overbearing boss who's convinced himself he's your dad. Okay? That's the only thing that's worse. Because then you get all the same hard-assery and overbearingness combined with this, like, constant, like, emotional manipulation and, you know, like, hey, I care about you. Don't you care about all this? Us? Together? Look at all we've worked together. Like that shit, you know? It's a far worse vibe because it adds all the emotional manipulation. This is why in many cases, working for a mom and pop business can be worse than working for a major box store, you know? Because at least if you're like one of 5 million employees at a Walmart location, there's not some degree of, like, fake personal investment you have to give into your job. You're not, like, going home that day feeling guilty because the boss implied they want you to stay later after hours and you did it because they're like an old guy and you want to help out. Like, no, it's Walmart. Like, you clock out when you clock out, you know? Vosh, I had this in my job. I refused to do overtime, so he'd take his time to unlock the door and let us out after we're clocked out. Nice. 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 Fantastic. Okay, so again, it's not possible for me to know for sure whether or not the woman's allegations are true. My guess is that that her cutting her leg open thing, even though it indicates a really bad workplace environment, also indicates a degree of emotional instability that casts a little bit of doubt, I think, onto her sort of trustworthiness as a narrator. That's not fair, but it's also true. As somebody who has known at least one person who has cut their leg open for dubious reasons, it does in fact impair my my impression of your trustworthiness a little. However, I think things are leaning pretty heavily, at least in my perspective, towards her complaints being correct. Like her overall, like she is correct when she is talking about the allegations or what has taken place here. So hopefully more comes out from this. Talk about the other drama too. We'll pace this one out a little bit, one drama at a time. Yeah, small business fetishization is not like amazing. There's this whole other drama right now that seems to be about like prototypes or something, and it's getting a lot of negative attention. But this is not the sexual harassment drama. So I guess I'll have to look at this one later because I don't want to cross the streams. Bad reviews and ethics with other companies. The Gamers Nexus goes into detail. We're going to look at it later, not right now. God damn, man. Pretty bad luck for them getting hit with a pretty huge sexual misconduct / overworking allegation combined with this. You know, you're getting both the social and the technical drama right off the bat. TLDR in the prototype is they knowingly tested it on the wrong model card, gaslit the company, they'll return it twice, then auction off. I'm not as tech-brained as a lot of you. I'd have to think about that for a bit to decide how bad that is. I mean, it's bad, obviously. I need to think about it. We'll go over that one later. Please cover this. A kid committed suicide because of Linus Tech Tips. This is talking about Madison Swoop, the Twitter thread that we looked at. A father talked to Reddit in 2022 to share the misfortunes in his life. Interestingly, his son set up a small YouTube channel called Mind Shop a while back. Sadly, the MCN he was affiliated with caused legal troubles that prevented him from receiving a silver play button. Yeah, never, ever, ever join any content networks, ever. Via auction, they acquired one from Linus Media Group that the group insisted on relinquishing it, which they opposed. This led to LTT supporters targeting his son with dislike and negative remarks on his channel. As a result, he ceased creating content, experienced profound despair. Additionally, he encountered torment from bullies at school. Sadly, the kid passed away in August. Tragically, his mother, feeling incomplete with how it took her life. I don't know how much can be said of this. This is really, really sad, but like this is one of those things where, yeah, I don't know how much we can make of this, like legitimately. The ambiguous wording of the article really doesn't give much information on what extent. Yeah, I don't know if I can do much of this. Linus told people to support the channel. It's the community being toxic as. Okay, but like, to be fair, man, is that really Linus's fault? Obviously, it's always good to rein in communities that go too far or that harass people. I agree with that. But is it really fair to lay the death of a child on him because his community was like mean to an like? I don't think that's fair at all. This isn't the first time an LTD has done basically nothing to rein them in. Yeah, the problem is just if you have a large enough community, inevitably, like, the sway of your presence online is going to lead to some people getting, like, harassment, and that's bad, and it should be dealt with. But I just feel really uncomfortable with, like, the logic of Linus didn't do enough to curtail the negativity of his community, so they bullied one guy on YouTube, so that person killed himself. Like, do we really think that the suicide was entirely because they were getting negative attention on YouTube? Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel kind of scummy. This article is scummy to me. LTT fan base's harassment allegedly forcing suicide? No, that dude. This article and the people who read it. You kidding me? This is disgusting skeevy drama bait. Like just the linking of like associations together until it's like, yeah, man, why was Madison so afraid to speak out? Because LTT will kill you if you speak it. Like, Jesus Christ. No, that's disgusting. I don't like this at all. The kid was bullied a lot and found solace in the tech creation, or tech content creation, if I recall correctly. Linus explicitly denounced his community for it. He probably didn't kill himself because of the online harassment. He almost certainly killed himself because of stuff online. Or sorry, not online, offline. Like, it even says he was getting bullied at school, you know? Like so much shit is like, and then you like look more into it, and it's like, oh, it turns out that like the kid was being sexually abused, and oh, it turns out like the one parent was an alcoholic, and oh, it turns out that like they were super desperately poor in their family life. Oh, his dog died. And it's like, okay, you know, if we want to do beef with LTT or whatever, we could check the Reddit post. The dad's not really a neutral source. If the dad really did lose his son and his wife, he's going to lash out and blame like anything, and I don't blame him for it necessarily. Let's blame Hassan again. Okay. Hassan funded this operation by buying a PC. That's true. That's true. Hassan is equally morally culpable. Can we acknowledge one thing first and foremost, okay? We all saw this coming. People who use the Linus operating system are psychotic. Right? Yeah. It's true. So we could assume all of this was going to happen. I don't know if the Linus Tech Tips guys actually use Linux. I don't actually know. I hope this is a joke. Linux, not Linus? Linus Tech Tips. For this entire time, I thought that their name was Linux Tech Tips, and I just never put two and two together. Why are they called Linus, then? I thought they were like a Linux people who branched out into other things. Because the owner's called Linus? That's dumb. That's stupid. That's fake. That's made up. Linus? Why would his parents name him that when that sounds so close to Linux? That's dumb. That's stupid. I'm sorry. They're lying. I said... Okay. Anyone whose name is so close to Linux, then, must be... I'm so tired. I need a new chair. The guy who made Linux is also named Linus? Son of a bitch! The guy who made Linux was Linus Torvald. Okay, hold on now. Well, hold on. Now I'm starting to look a little smart, actually. It's almost like my subconscious knew there was a deeper connection between Linus and Linux. Linus and It's almost like my big brain smart head, my big head, big, you all dumb. You dumb. You dumb, me smart. Just a little bit. Holy shit. Get this man a chair stat. He's crashing.